In this video, we will have a close-up look at the Nitte, more commonly called Nikke, station and camp area at the 282-kilometer mark along the historic Thailand-Burma Railway. Normally, this area is submerged under the lake behind the Vajiralongkorn Dam. In April 2026, the water level in the area dropped, as it often does, but this year it dropped so quickly that the entire area baked dry into a mudflat before the usual grass and bushes had time to grow, leaving visible on the mud many things which I had never seen before. We'll get to those in a minute. This is a composite of two photos taken by a British recon plane on November 10, 1943, only 3 weeks after the railway was completed. We are looking down on the vast area of the Nikke camp and railway station on the north bank of the Ranti River. Nikke was an important site for both sides. For the Allies, it was the F-Force headquarters and hospital camp for the F-Force camps in this area. For the Imperial Japanese Army, it was a huge camp, housing specialist units only found in a few of the camps. For the railway, it was one of the 6 major railway stations along the line, with locomotive inspection and maintenance workshops. In this photo, the railway has just been completed and the railway tracks around the station are not yet finished, and will change significantly, as will the camp itself. This is the Japanese diagram for the railway here at Nikke Station, and most of these tracks are in place already. This spur track, labelled in Japanese water supply, is here, curving down to the river where locomotives could be refilled with water. Also visible is the 65-foot-long bridge Q335, where the railway curves into the station area. The 3 tracks through the station area are complete, as is the turning triangle, but the locomotive maintenance facilities here and the bypass loop on the south side are not yet finished. North of the turning triangle there are supposed to be 2 spur tracks, but only one is currently in place and the second will never be built. The track to the west will eventually have a short running loop, then connect to the main line here. The other spur track, labelled gravel line, curves down to a large sandbar in the river here. At the junction we can also see the 2 bridges Q336 and Q337. The main line continues along an embankment, approach viaduct, and then across the big bridge Q338 across the Ranti River. We'll call this the first version of Q338, as we'll see in a moment that the entire structure and embankment were later rebuilt slightly upstream. The railway then curves sharply northeast, over a pair of 30 to 40-foot bridges, which will later be abandoned, and then through a cutting and around a bend out of frame. Key areas to watch as we work through the video are here, where the locomotive facilities will soon be built, here at the gravel track, and here at the far side of the Ranti River Bridge. Other useful landmarks which we will use are here, where the main road coming into the camp from the south crosses the railway right at the gravel track junction, this long straight road fronting the camp and crossing the railway again, and what will soon be a 3-way split of the main line coming down from Burma when this track joins the main line. Let's try to identify some parts of the camp. Considering the size and importance of this camp, there is surprisingly little information about the camp layout, either from the Allied or the Japanese sides. All I have are 3 sketch maps, none of them very detailed. These 2 both indicate the camp between the river and a road where it curves north and crosses the railway. The Australian cemetery is shown as being 250 yards from the bend in the road. The Dutch cemetery is marked between the road and the railway. That leads me to believe that the POW camp is this section here, with the long road in front of the camp, then curving north to cross the railway. The Australian cemetery is possibly down this path to a clearing here, but I'm not sure. The Dutch cemetery is not clear on the photo, but going by the sketch it should be in this area. This third sketch is very difficult to match with the photo. It clearly shows Nikke Station, with the road and railway crossing over each other to the east. Then the railway and road each crossing a bridge, with the camp at the road bridge and on the station side of the river. This map doesn't seem to resemble any areas in the photo, and I suspect it may be referring to Little Nikke or Shimo Nikke. Let's put this one aside for now. Another clue that this is the Allied POW area is that there are no roads for motor vehicles anywhere in this section, only cleared footpaths. The rest of the camp has road access, as you would expect around a major Japanese camp. If we look closely at the photo, we can see a row of lorries parked here. This was likely the Japanese garage and maintenance facilities for motor vehicles, probably with warehouses nearby. This section of the camp, I believe, was the Japanese barracks and living areas, with many huts that you would expect for kitchens, canteens, stores, and so on. A lot of Japanese-style ceramic fragments were seen in the area of this long hut, which was possibly the mess hall or cookhouse or something like that, but definitely Japanese. And a little farther to the east, I believe this area was the location of some of the specialist units in the Imperial Japanese Army. In this part of the camp, I saw dozens of pieces of simple medical equipment in the mud, some with Japanese markings on the glass, and some which were clearly British. I believe this was the compound of a unit in the IJA which translates into something like the 9th Water Supply and Purification Department. A distant relative of the notorious Unit 731, the 9th Water Supply was responsible for water purification, sanitation, and disease control. I'm going to talk about the 9th Water Supply, who used all this medical equipment for cholera testing, in a separate video to keep this video focused on Nikke. Just to the west was a concrete base and cistern tank, probably a water purifier for the Japanese camp, since providing drinkable water was another key role of the 9th Water Supply Unit. I believe that the other compounds in this area are other specialized units of the IJA. Now let's have a look at how the camp and especially the railway changed over the course of the war. Starting here at the big bridge over the Ranti River, watch these three things. First, the point where the gravel siding joins the main line, very close to the road crossing. Second, the radius and trace of this curve, and last, the radius and trace of this curve. If we very slowly move 14 months ahead to January 1945, we can see that the entire bridge has been realigned. The old railway trace is still visible on the ground here at the curve and here at the approach embankment. But the bridge is gone and an entirely new bridge has been built. This is likely because the original bridge was very low and vulnerable to flash flooding from the nearby river. Looking straight up the new approach embankment here, this is the new embankment, and you can see how much lower the old track was, in the cutting on the left in the distance and along the flat ground to the left. The Japanese probably realized that the bridge was too low and used the dry season of early 1944 to redo it before the monsoon season arrived. You can imagine this would have been an enormous project, as this bridge is actually longer than the timber bridge in Kanchanaburi. Also, the original line would need to be left in service to keep the railway running, while the new embankment, approach viaduct, and bridge over the river were built. Then the old bridge timbers were removed, probably to build the new bypass line which was planned, and we'll look at in a moment. Also of note is that the gravel spur down to the river is so far unchanged, and much of the Japanese camp has been relocated to this cluster at the gravel track. There is also now another camp across the river here. This may be the so-called Nikke Bridge Camp, possibly they were the ones who worked on rebuilding the bridge. However, on the rocky hilltop here at these three huts, there were many broken Japanese beer bottles from the Dai Nippon and Union Brewing Companies. So this area seems to have been a popular drinking spot for the Japanese Army. It probably offered impressive views of the army and railway operations across the entire valley. Now, if we go another 2 months ahead to March 1945, we can see the new bypass track and bridge are almost finished. The bridge pilings have been driven into the riverbed, but the spans are not yet completed. The bypass branches off the gravel spur and reconnects on the other side of the river. The main bridge shows signs of heavy bombing at this point, with bomb craters along the length of the approach viaduct and the bridge itself. This photo, taken on March 31st at 1:18 in the afternoon, shows the bypass bridge under attack, although it's still intact. The main bridge is utterly destroyed and surrounded by bomb craters. There are also many bomb craters within the Japanese camp area. And this photo was taken around an hour later at 2:20, and we can see that the bypass bridge is now badly damaged, and the bombing has switched back to what little was left of the main bridge in the previous photo. Let's have a closer look at the station area. The locomotive maintenance section of the yard is shown clearly in this photo. Here is the turning triangle, and this area immediately south of it was the locomotive servicing area. This building was the locomotive workshop. Inside there was an inspection pit, shown here. The pit had steps at each end and wood timbers bolted lengthwise down the sides. The rails were spiked to these timbers to maintain the correct gauge. Mechanics could go down the steps under the locomotive to work on the running gear from below. Just to the east of the locomotive shed, there were unloading ramps on either side of the track. After being submerged for 80 years, they have collapsed and spread quite a lot. This long building between the two tracks seems to have been the fuel depot. In the area which was the east end of this building, there was a lot of coal on the ground. We talked about coal before in the Kinsayok video. Coal was used as the fuel for the trains going over the big hill between Whampoa and Kinsayok. Here at Nikke is the start of the second big hill, up and over the Three Pagodas Pass and back down to Apollon, the next major station on the other side of the hill. And there was very likely a similar coal shed at Apollon for the trains coming the other way from Burma. This fuel shelter probably contained large stacks of firewood as well as the coal. The ash dump, where locomotive engineers cleaned out the locomotive's ash pan, was along this track here, where there's a considerable depth of ash and cinders along the track. West of the ash dump here, there was another pair of unloading ramps. You can see that the siding from the north end of the turning triangle has a running loop and now connects to the main line just west of the junction to the south bypass. Before we finish, I want to show a few historic photos taken during one of the bombing runs against the Ranti River Bridge here at Nikke. On February 7, 1945 at 2:44 p.m., we can see a pair of Azon bombs falling over the big cliff on the north side of the station towards Nikke below. We can see the timbers of the approach viaduct and also the bridge itself, and the bombs appear to have hit the bridge. 2 minutes later, another bomb is falling and we can see the bridge obscured by smoke from the previous run, but I don't have a photo showing the impact of this bomb. And lastly, one thing I need to add is that not everything you will see at Nikke is related to the war. On the west side of the station, here between the road and the bypass track, you can find some large concrete bases. You can see that there was nothing here in 1945. I think these have been mistaken for Japanese buildings in the past, but they're actually the remains of a small Karen settlement and the Nong Padong school, built after the war but then abandoned when this area was flooded by the dam. Here's some footage and photos showing these structures, and on closer inspection you can see quite modern toilet facilities in the school. Definitely not from the war. And that's all for this look at the area around Nikke Station. We'll end with some footage of what the area looks like today. As always, the mini-map shows where we are on the wartime photos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.